צהריים טובים ובוקר טוב לכולם, אנחנו מאוד מאוד שמחים שהגעתם, שמחים לארח אתכם כאן, והתודה היא לאופר שינער שתכף יספר כמה מילים על המקום. כולם כאן, או כמעט כולם, מהאירוע. אני אמיר רוגל מארגון מעפילי קפריסין, שאפשר לראות כאן את הסמל שלו, הקמנו אותו לפני כ5 שנים, והייעוד של הארגון הוא הנצחת כל המעפילים והנחלת המורשת שלהם. אני רוצה להציג את רומן וסרמן, שהוא האורח שלנו משבדיה, שהגיע לתת לנו הרצאה על מעפילי האירוע בדרכם מברגן בלזן עד לאלואה. ואני מזמין את אופר, בבקשה.
צהריים טובים. לא הכנתי שום נאום, אני שמח לארח כאן, ניתנה לי הזכות הגדולה, ראיתי פשוט, הכניס אותי לקבוצת וואטסאפ לפני שבוע. התחלתי לראות שמחפשים מקום, אז הצעתי כמובן את עצמי. אני מרגיש חובה מוסרית עצומה להורים שלי, אנחנו כולנו בנים של, ואני בטוח שכל אחד מאיתנו מרגיש שאם אפשר היה להשיב את ההורים שלנו היום, היינו יכולים לשאול אותה, היינו רוצים ליום או ליומיים לשאול אותם עוד כמה שאלות ועוד כמה דברים, ואם אנחנו יכולים להחזיר להם במשהו את החוב העצום שאנחנו חייבים לגיבורים האלה, אז זה הדבר הקטן ביותר שאפשר לעשות, זה באמת לארח כאן, וזה הזכות שלי. אני ממשיך דרכו של אבי הדייג, כאן יש לי פארק, קוראים לזה פארק דייג, אבל זה מקום בילוי לכל המשפחה. אחר כך שיהיה לכולנו משהו שיחזק את הנפש ואת הרוח.
ואני מתכבד להזמין את רומן וסרמן וובלבסקי. אביו היה בבית היתומים של יאנוש קורצ'ק 10 שנים, והוא הציל את המסמכים, חלק מהיומנים של יאנוש קורצ'ק, ואת המשקפיים שלו, אם אתם מכירים את הצילום המפורסם. נולד בפולין, הוא נמלט מפולין, הייתה שם מגמה אנטישמית. רומן פיתח קריירה אקדמית רפואית, את הדוקטורט שלו הוא השלים בשבדיה, והקים את שני גופים. גוף אחד נקרא שמה, והשין הזה פה זה של שמה, זה אגודת הנצחת השואה בשבדיה. הגוף השני נקרא קהילה, זה ראשי תיבות באותיות זה, וזה להנצחת יאנוש קורצ'ק ומורשתו. בשנים האחרונות רומן פעיל מאוד בתיעוד, כתב ספר. רומן, you are most welcome.
Okay, thank you. I would just say to thank you to the offer for letting us to be here, and thank you for all organizers and the people involved to fix this meeting. I belong to second generation, and as many of you, I found rather late that I know nothing about my parents and what was their fate during the Holocaust, and unfortunately I could finish my research concerning my family very quickly, because my grandparents and the rest of the family were sent 42 from the Warsaw Ghetto to Treblinka and were gassed. And in the similar matter, my grandparents from the city of Pinsk, they were murdered during the time which was called Holocaust by bullets. They were just shot at put into the mass grave. So that's true, and there is no more possibility to make any research on it. Actually, the story which I am going to tell you, and you are welcome to just ask during my presentation, the story actually started in Israel. And it started with someone that was in medical science, and he wrote me a letter that his uncle wants to know where his brother's sister grave is, and he knows that she was at a certain hospital in close to the Stockholm, and then she died. And that was like 25 years ago. And then I asked Jewish community, Jewish congregation in Stockholm, and they say, oh, there is a kind of the field at the cemetery, and we don't have a list, we don't know nothing. And actually my hospital where I work, Karolinska Hospital, is just the neighbor of the cemetery. where there were Jewish graves. So during the lunches, I just took my white coat off and took the brushes and started to dig up the matzevas because they were below the level. And actually, on the last day, it was matzeva number 78 or something like that. That was her matzeva. So, and the girl's name was, of course, misspelled. It was made to something else, but I will show you later. But I just wanted to have this introduction that thanks to the guy, his name was Oren, or Uren, he and his email, I started to work with this group that came to Sweden at the end of the war, 45, and actually then I started more and more to work on the people that were on Ulua ship. And this first picture is kind of the prologue and epilogue. The prologue is the picture from the Bergen Belsen after the liberation. And I actually know who this lady is. This is her sister. This is her sister that died after the liberation, and she's here peeling the potatoes. And what you can see here behind, there are piles of bodies, dead bodies. And I think it is important to remember that picture because this is all people that came from the camps and survived. They were just very, very close to the death. And as I mentioned before, this is a prologue and epilogue. So prologue, this is how it started. Epilogue is on the right side, and this is the card of one of the Mapilim that left Sweden on Ulua, and here you can see on the stamp that they left the city of or port of the Trelleborg on January 24, and what is meant below Utresa. Utresa means going out, leaving. And here are just from the liberation to actually it should be called from the end of the war to and it is a question of the arrival to Sweden, and most of the people, including the big scientists at the Yad Vashem, they are talking about some royal person called Mr. Bernadotte and make him to a great hero. My idea about Mr. Bernadotte is a bit different. And if you look here, you can find out that most of the Holocaust survivors, they arrived to Sweden by the UNRWA, UNRRA mission, which was called later white boats. So most of the Jews, they arrived with the white boats. 45, I would say no one is working on it, unfortunately. So there are no data. There are just suggestions. But there are no data. And this is actually just a suggestion that this is what I feel. So 50% came like more or less on the white boats. 5% came with Mr. Bernadotte or the Swedish Red Cross white buses. And 45% came on the two so-called spoke trains, which arrived, which were going around in Germany, and they arrived to the city of Padborg in Denmark. The white boats were. This is kind of the usually they were white. Some of them, or most of them, were white. The two were not painted white because they came directly from. How we call the factory? There were yeah, right. So the next one we will go here, and this is rather important to look for the flow chart. What happened to the survivors? And first of all, they landed what was called BB. We just put as Bergen-Belsen because just we wanted to have it on the same slide. So BB means that was a Bergen-Belsen hospital that was very close to the concentration camps. So the survivors were continuously moved from the camp area to the, let's call it, hospital car area that was cross over the street almost. So that was step one, and that was from the liberation to June 45. The next step was, it was moving when they became a bit healthier, and there was agreement between UNRWA and the Swedish government. They were moved. This is where the action of the white boat started. So as a first stop, there was moving the patients from the Bergen-Belsen hospital by the train to the Lübeck port, to the Lübeck hospitals. And then we can see that from this the place that was called Swedish Transit Hospital, they were taken on the white boats, and from the white boats, the next step, they travel over the Baltic Sea to different cities in Sweden. Most of the cities were, of course, the ports, because that was the easiest way for transportation. So they went, of course, the shortest port, the shortest distance. There were ports of Trelleborg, Malmö, and so on. But they went to the ports at the west coast, like Gothenburg and Uddevalla, and they went on the east coast, on the Baltic Sea. They went to Kalmar, Norrköping, and Stockholm. Yeah, Kalmar, Norrköping, and Stockholm, and that was so there was one boat that was going especially just to Kalmar and Norrköping, and there was another boat that was making those long tours to Stockholm. And from the boat, they were transferred. The survivors were transferred to the different hospitals. There were some of them were hospitals to start with, but some of them were kind of the emergency hospitals. They were prepared from the schools, right? And during 2 first weeks, and sometimes in 3 weeks, there was a complete quarantine, and as more survivors arrived with the next boat, so the quarantine was long because they were mixed in the school areas and so on. After they being at this hospital, so of course depending on the health condition, they were transferred to a kind of the detention camps. And many of the detention camps, they were, maybe it's not the right word, but they were oriented according to the language the survivors spoke. So unfortunately, to start with, Swedish authorities put all the Jews together with the Polish in the same, and Polish I mean here the Christian people, in the same camp, and then different authorities ran different festivities in Polish and Polish tradition, and this is what the Jewish population not especially liked, and there were of course some of the conflicts in those Polish Jewish camps, and that I mean Polish speaking camps. In the same way, they were the Hungarian, Romanian, and so on. Detention camps, they were not closed, but one was not allowed to move to another city or to visit someone or the family in the that was in 15 kilometers range. So for this, you have to write the application. Please let me visit my sister, and that was very official paperwork. Already at the time, it's not the right word in those detention camps, but you understand they met people from Israel. The Israel sent a special emissary people, and they start to. They went to the special schools on different levels, and among the subjects they were learning Hebrew. They were learning about what was called at that time the Palestine geography, and so on and so on. What was very special was that 46, most of them, but I'm just saying most of them, they were young, so they got the health back. And during the 46, many of them were working together in the southern Sweden to picking up the beets, and some of them went to the northern Sweden and were digging torf. And what was the name of torf in Hebrew?
Kavul.
Kavul. And that was rather tough work, and I got from one of the girls that was there, and she was just 12, and she was doing that, but she was happy because they found each type of work they were happy to do. They were just bored of doing nothing.
They were paid.
Yeah. And so after this 46, and this is partly the work of different Jewish organizations, they were trying to place people, the Jews, in the southern area because they wanted them to, of course, go to Eretz Israel. So the easiest way was, as Sweden is so elongated, the easiest way was to go south. And actually, already during 46, and I will show it to you, the preparation started to leave the Sweden as group number 3, and that was prepared to be the first Aliyah Bet group. And the idea to go by the ship was, of course, as in many other cases, what it was difficult from Sweden to pass that many borders, to go to the, let's say, south of France or south of Italy or whatsoever on the coast that was closer to. So they decided, the Ulua, that one of the ships, there were several ships that were trying to do it. And that's what I am going to show you, that they arranged the special trains on the day before departure from the Gävle in north that went all the way by passing the Stockholm to Trelleborg, and then on the date all of you know, on the 24th of January, Ulua, next please, left the port of Trelleborg. What is of interest, and I think that this is of special interest for you, is that are the documents. So many of the documents that, there were not so many documents, but some of the documents that survivors brought with them to Sweden, the survivors which now I say exclusively that came with the white boats from Bergen-Belsen, were British field medical card. Normally, as you can see here, the medical cards were given to the wounded soldiers and so on, but in this case, as it was as the hospital in Bergen-Belsen was run by British medical corps, they were given to Holocaust survivors. And here is one of the girl, of course, most of it is misspelled, but her name was Mendel Zofia, and she was from Lodz, and you can see the age on the right is 17 years old, and that means that she was just 11 when World War II started. You can see here this card when it's open, and this is so typical for those medical cards that belongs to the Holocaust survivors, that you have drawn pictures of the lungs, as you can see at the left. They were just making the X-rays, drawing the lungs, and then putting some dots in the area that were X-ray positive. Yes. So this is what I said, that pictures lungs, and there were as well the medical history here, and what they were giving, kind of the shots and so on. So this is inside the card we saw above. Another type of the card that they received or they came with to Sweden was so-called Dp2 cards, and quite a lot of information that Shesheret and Amir and Ali are asking, they are actually in this card, because here you have at the top, you have the name of the person. That was kind of the interview before sending away them. So you have the name of the patient or of the person that was going away. You have the name of the birth, you have place of the birth, you have the names of, which is important when looking through the archives, there are names of the parents, and as well the maiden names in way of the women. And then there is rather tough reading at the bottom here, because at the bottom is so-called other information, and other information is actually what happened to their parents, what happened to their siblings, and so this is kind of the very sad reading, because normally that was just one person or two persons that survived the Holocaust, and the rest of the families they perished. This is French. Interviewers in Lübeck hospital, there were Polish and French and Dutch and German. So in that case, that was the interviewer was the French person, and you can see here that was two brothers died here, and one sister, Edith, 18 years, died here, and so on and so on. But it's this is the French, which more or less the brother and the father and so on, which is easy to learn. And this is kind of the third document that was filled in Lübeck before the entrance to Sweden, and the document is called the entrance document in Sweden. Most of them that came with the white boat, they were in Lübeck, because Lübeck was the transit center.
It's a harbor.
And that was harbor, and at that time the harbor was just in the middle of the city, really in the middle. Now they put a lot of bridges and so on, so so they are using the port of Travemünde, not the Lübeck. But at that time you could go into the almost the city center. So here we have another girl, which was Brill Ita, and you have just where she came from. That is from place what is called in Poland Pabianice, and this is seems to be her kind of her own handwriting. And here you can see the as we saw, the last stamp was Utresa when Ulua was leaving. Here we have Inresa, coming to Sweden, and we have the date of July 15th, 45, and she came to Stockholm and was hospitalized in Sweden, and I think that she died after 3 days in the Swedish hospital.
What are the conditions?
So this is just the card that was given to the border police when they were leaving the boat. And this card were later as well used, the back of that card, as I described in the book, that it was used for the some police information. If someone was moved from the Mykkelby to Sigtuna or so on, it was noted the date and so on. Next, please. Here we are going to the Lübeck. You ask about the Lübeck hospital and Lübeck port. So this is the place where the survivors arrived by train. The train from Bergen-Belsen Hospital. And in the building over there at the bottom, there was a registration center. Then we have a lot of tents here, and that was like at the Ford car factory. The survivors had to enter at this end, and then they were leaving the clothing. Then they were they were washed, and then they were put the DDT on, and then they were going as well to sauna. And during the time they were in sauna, all the clothing was. This is kind of the wagon they put the gas in to clear all the water up. So disinfection, and there were kind of the two lines of washing, and that was part of the hospital, and of course entire area belonged before the war to during the war to the Wehrmacht. Here you can see just how it looked like in this drill area. There were soldiers before. We can see there are several stretchers, and the people on the stretchers were waiting for the turn to go through this disinfection and washing procedure. Next one, please. Here is after 2 days or 3 days, depending on the health condition, if it was possible, the survivors were transferred, as I mentioned before, from the Bergen-Belsen to Lübeck. So that was the crew. I should show it just before. That was the crew that was taking care of the survivors from Bergen-Belsen to Lübeck. So they were transported by the special ambulance train. Yes. And here is the survivors are brought from the Lübeck hospital, and they are brought to the ship in Lübeck. So from Lübeck hospital, from the Swedish to the Lübeck, and you can see that the people around, they have different uniforms. So the guys with the baskets, they are of course British. There are British ambulances. Then you have two guys here, one smoking and another one, this is part of the crew. And then you have two guys carrying the stretchers. And those two guys, they are Germans, so they have still the Wehrmacht uniforms. They were, before they were prisoner of wars, but now they were in a way released, so they could do the job for the UNRWA. Next, please. The girl here is, her name is Olga Deutsch, and the photo on the left, it's taken at the end of 47. That girl came on Ulua, and this is from the athlete camp. We have her documents, which are from, someone mentioned here or asked me about the Arolsen archives. So the picture at the top is from the Arolsen archives. It's her prisoner in the German concentration camp. It's a prisoner card, and here we can see the same name. We can see below this Dp2 card with her name. So there are several documents one can look, one can find, one can follow. Next, please. Looking at this, you saw before this Dp2 card, and I told you that there is a lot of information, personal information about the persons, about the family on those cards. And here you have mother and daughter that came from Bergen-Belsen, and they were from Piotrków Trybunalski. That's Piotrków is the place in Poland, the little city, and Piotrków is known for most of the people as the first ghetto was established in Piotrków. That was already in October. It was 3 weeks after Germans went in, so the first ghetto was actually established over there. What you can see here on those two Dp cards, they are also its mother and the daughter. You can see that they are, I enlarge it a bit, there is a letter S and L, and that means how they were transferred on the white boat. So one was lying, she was carried on the stretcher, and the second category was the sitting person that could go on board by herself. Here is one of the boats that went just to ports of the Kalmar and Norrköping. The name of that boat was Prince Carl, and it belonged actually to the Swedish Navy. So the proper name of it is HMS His Majesty, and so ship Prince Carl. And here, of course, we can see that this is just kind of the postcard, but that boat went I think 3 or 4 times to Kalmar and Norrköping, and afterwards it went once from the Malmö to the port in Gotland. There is an island which is called Gotland. So it went to Gotland, and at Gotland Island there was TBC, tuberculosis hospital. So all of the survivors that were brought to Malmö, and there was severe there was severe tuberculosis, they were sent to this special hospital on Gotland. And why I'm telling you, because some of you are saying just just a name like Mickelby or Täby or so on, but my father, my mother, they were there, but most of them were transferred between different places, and they were part of the transfer were due to their age, because they should they should start the schools. For some of them, they should start the gymnasium and so on. So if they have been at a certain place like at Täby or Renninge or something like that, they might be there just for during the summer, and after the summer they were transferred to another places. So don't be blind for knowing just one name, because they were just at certain place for a short time. Next slide, please. Here someone, I know who, asked me here from the audience about my mother and my father. They came to Gothenburg, and this is the boat that was going from, it's a Danish boat called Crown Princess Ingrid, Kronprinsessan Ingrid, and that boat was going mainly between Lübeck port and Gothenburg. Sometimes it stopped in Trelleborg to get to let someone of the survivors to go off or for other reasons. And you can see that the boat is painted, of course, white. You can see the sign of Red Cross, and you can see as well Swedish flag and something which is Sverige. Sverige means it's Sweden, just right. On the right here, I found my old colleague that was associated professor when I was making PhD at the Department of Neurology. Her name is Lisa Velander, And Lisa Welander was very young at that time. She just finished her medical studies, and she was doctor on Kronprinsessan Ingrid. This is one of the few pictures, but it's a very special picture because the boat was actually the ferry that was going between Sweden and I think Gothenburg and Denmark. And that was a car ferry as well. So to increase the capacity of transferring the people, they built on the car deck the new places new bunks to accommodate survivors. So here's the picture of the Lisa and some of the male survivors, and Lisa became a full professor of the medicine in the city in the north called Umeå. Next, please. Oh, here is Lisa as well, and so it's not a pandemic picture, but she's carrying here the mask, and around her are groups of the Holocaust survivors on the way from Lübeck to Gothenburg. Next, please. As I said, most of the people and the shortest way from Lübeck was, of course, to the Malmö, to the Trelleborg. That was the distance, was the shortest distance between Germany and Sweden. And of course, there were so many of the refugees that came that way that they could not carry the normal hospital work. So often after 2 weeks in Malmö, they were sent further to Sweden. I will show you, among others, to the hospital in Örebro, and there is no river and there is no port in Örebro, so the only way to transport them was by Swedish ambulance trains. And here they are unloading the ambulance train and taking on the stretcher survivors to the ambulances and transporting them further to emergency hospitals at that time. Next, please. Here is just one of the someone told me that many of your parents were in Borås, and this is one of the local newspapers from this area. And this local newspapers, it's showing two of the Belsen girls on the stretchers and on the way to those emergency hospitals. Next, please. Oh, I actually like a lot this picture because it shows so much, and so if you will allow me to tell you what it is on the, it's a kind of the questionnaire, and they are the answer from the Holocaust survivors, many of them that came on the Ulua. There are no names, but as I told you, that was 46. So here is answer of the question, do you work? And you can see that all of them worked. Here you can see that they work in the paper factory in the Örebro. Here they work at the the leather factories and so on and so on. So this is one. Then it's a question, where do you like, making in the Jewish way or the Hebrew way, from the right to the left. The next one from the right is, where do you like to go? What is your idea? What would you like to do later? And you can see on many answer directly the Palestine, that means the Eretz Israel. And some of them want to go to Romania or to Poland to check if maybe there is the survivor over there, and they were letting, Sweden were giving the special passes with the return visa, so they were letting Jews to try leaving the Sweden and coming back. So that was very nice. There were few that wanted to go to USA because there was similar. It was not possible to enter. It was like there was like entering. America was as difficult at that time as entering Mandate of Palestine, right? And the one in the middle is about the wounds or something. If they and what happened to them, and among the wounds, you can see that Swedish doctors they found that the Auschwitz number or the tattoos was kind of the what should be stated. Then we have something on the left, and we have the weight when they came to Sweden, and weight now, how heavy they were. But of course, when they came to Sweden, most of them were after that was like 3 months after they have been in the hospital in Bergen-Belsen and in hospital in Lübeck. I mentioned the hospital in Örebro, and you saw that picture of the ambulance train that went from the Malmö to Örebro, and this is one of the medical cards from Örebro. What is beautiful about this about the Örebro hospital, that the chief doctor, I wrote his paper. He had the hell to pronounce Polish name or Polish Jewish name. So he said, I cannot say or found the patient which name is Brzezinski or something like that. So he asked the hospital photographer to make the picture of all of the patients. So if you had your mother or father or auntie or whatsoever that were at the Örebro, at the Örebro hospital, I am sure that most of them, I look through all the files, and I am sure that this is the possibility to find the photo. Unfortunately, this is what they were not doing in Stockholm, they were not doing it in Malmö and so on. What is very special is here in the Swedish is what the doctor was asking the person, what was your health before the war, what happened to you during and your family during the war. And this is actually, I found it as most interesting, this part of the medical card for my research and actually for you. But the anamnesis is on all cards. But the pictures, the photos are just mainly from, I found occasionally from other hospitals, but it was occasionally. Here is a bit nicer, it was typed, the doctor's writing, and you can read it by yourselves, and it is, and this is kind of the testimony which is it is rather tough to read, and I was reading like 5,000 or 8,000 of such testimonies, and this is about so it is rather tough. I just choose one which was not that tough, but in most cases they are describing that, let's say for Hungarian Jews, that they are describing the family was transported from the ghetto in Hungary to Auschwitz. In Auschwitz, my mother and my two small sisters, they were sent to gas chambers. That was the last time I saw them. And I was sent to the work in the German camp, let's say Ravensbrück, and this is what you can find on most of the cards. And it is kind of the extension of this information you can find on the Dp2 cards. As you know, the last white bus that brought Jews, actually, finally, that they were bringing the Jews, because the white buses brought more Nazis to Sweden than Jews. There is a note that 1500, they call them German Swedes, and those they were the real Nazis and the children that were brought by the white buses to Sweden. But no one is talking about. They are listed on the Red Cross pages, and you here in the Yad Vashem, you have still this white bus standing, and I don't know why. Here are. I just wanted to show you different types of those doctor cards, and on the left is information about the patient, the weight of the person, what I was looking as well, the color of the skin, and in many cases the color of the skin is called blue, yellow, or almost black, or so it's a tough reading if you can read it. And this card came from the hospital from Uddevalla, which is just above the Gothenburg. And the first place. Here is another card showing that how important were the lungs, because most of the patients had or the survivors had problems with the lungs. They were in the areas that were heavily populated, so the diseases or the spread of it was rather easy. So on the back of most cards there is a stamp. Oh, here is just the note that the person died on the 27th of March at 7 o'clock. So that was 46 after 8 months. Next one. Here you can enjoy because this is there are two things which you can look at. On the left side you have 92 places there where the survivors were placed, and as I told you before, they were moved between different places quite often. And what you have here at the bottom is the number which is 3,311. This is what Chalut's organization wanted to send to Israel, but Chalut's organization was actually working with all the others organization, both the Zionists and non-Zionist socialists and so on. And if we go to on the right, I can show you that here at the bottom there is with the little red point, and this is the Trelleborg port. And going up, we have on the left we have Gothenburg, and on the right we have here is the Norrköping, and below it's of course Kalmar, and at the top here is the Stockholm. But as I told you before, the people were in different detention camps north of Stockholm as well. And if you go to the next slide, it's just the enlargement of the former slide, so you can read the number of as they stated at the bottom of the Haverim that could go to make the on the Aliyah Bet ship. Some of them are very, very special. It's for the names which you can often find. It's the Vinoker, Furudal, and this is summer 46, and I told you that here was the most of the young Holocaust survivors. They were sent to the fields from detention camps. They were sent to the fields to work, and that they got paid for this work. I know, of course, almost all those guys and what's their names, and most of them came with the white boats. The guy on the second from the right, he escaped from Poland after the Kielce pogrom 46. So he came to Sweden a bit later. He survived the Holocaust in Russia. Then he returned to Poland 45, but after the Kielce pogrom, he, similar to me, escaped on the boat, on the fishing boat from Gdynia to Malmö. Here is another group of the girls and boys working on the beet harvest, returning home. Next one. I mentioned that they were working as well with the peat, and the peat is used in Sweden for heating. And you pick it up, it's wet and heavy, and then you transport it for drying, and then you can use it instead of coal. So here one of the girls was I think she was 12 here on the pictures, is the girl on the right. And she was from Piotrków Trybunalski, as I remember. Next one. Oh, this is something for the Mykelby people. And what is special about this is that I found correspondence, the paper between the chief of this of Mykelby with the Swedish Film Institute. And Swedish Film Institute, he asked them, could we please, the survivors want to see the movie Gone with the Wind. And he got the answer, oh, it's too expensive to send to you Gone with the Wind, but you can show the survivors the movie of Bambi. Do you recognize here someone? I have the list from Mykelby on the left, and I have the picture of Mykelby as well. Are they people that can recognize someone? Can you read the names? This is very much, and this is very special, and this is my own research about the survivors that left on Ulua. And as you know before, and many of you that are here, they mentioned they have relatives. They came on those two first groups, and in those two first groups, among them many children. They have the Swedish so-called Främlings passport. That means the alien's passport. Now, when it was a rather big group, they planned for 650, 700 person to go on Ulua. They have to do it in a different way. And why they have to do it in a different way? The British government was, of course, not lucky to see that there are so many Jews from Sweden that are leaving for Eretz Israel. And we know all the action against the Aliyah Bet ships, but here they started, and we know that Ulua was about to be stopped several times before reaching Trelleborg. So what the Jewish organization did together in some way, together with the Swedish authorities, they decided that the people which will enter Ulua, they are not going to have valid stay permit. So that was one of the first things. So they had the stay permit until November or December, but it was not renewed. So they had no reason to stay in Sweden. The next thing was to leave the Sweden was they should have the visa of the foreign country. And what they got, and what is described here, they got a visa to Cuba. And the third thing was that they were not owners of the Swedish passport. So there were just 2 persons that have Främlingspass, but all others on the Ulua ship, they had the Polish and Czech and Hungarian and Romanian national passports. The Polish consulate gave them in Sweden and Romanian and Hungarian and Czech. They gave, and here the Swedish authorities were giving to the Jews those Främlings passports, but they were given mainly to present those Främlings passport to the Czech and Polish and Hungarian consulate. So when they were getting the Polish, the Främlings passport, they were issuing the national passport and taking and sending the Främlings passport back to the Swedish authorities. So finally, the ship that was going from Sweden was supposed not to be Swedish. And the Ulua, as all of you know, it had the Honduras flag. This is part of the work the Swedish authorities and the Jewish organization were doing together, in a way. So actually, those were 2 of the application for the last stay permit. But they were not signed by the applicants. Instead, they were just, the applicant's name were glued by the Jewish organization. And on the left you have the paper, I think, of Malka Weiss, that is mother of Benny Gantz, and here is another person, and I took them, it's Hella something, Mochnik, but what you can see, they are glued, they are not signed, so that was kind of the close cooperation between those different Jewish organizations. Next one. So this is just a copy of the visa of Cuba, and no one have seen the original. This is just kind of the copy of the copy of the copy. The Ulua became very kind of this is what actually Swedish government dislike, and Jewish organization dislike even more, to give the publicity to Ulua, because they were afraid that British authorities and they will stop the Ulua. But here we can see the first page of the biggest newspaper, and we can see that this is just enlargement, and here was just one of the prince of the royal family that died. So this is the news number 1, and the next to it is that the immigrant ship Ulua with Jews from Sweden was stopped in Le Havre. So that was the first stop. I'm just showing you that it was a difficult task to hide this story, to silence it. The next one is many other newspapers, Swedish news. There are many other newspapers, the first pages with the information of Ulua, and actually the information, I don't know how, I was working for several weeks to find who was leaking the information to the press. Because I could kill the person, but there was a certain leak to the Swedish agencies, because when the train started from Stockholm on the way to Trelleborg, the entire central station, railway station in Stockholm, it was filled by the photographers and the journalists, and they were asking the survivors, where are you going? And the girls were saying they were not supposed to say where, and so, oh, and then they just say, oh, we are going abroad, we want to marry someone. And here is one of the last pictures, probably taken in January, of the group that is leaving Sweden. It is taken at that time, it's taken in southern Sweden. They are standing on snow. And again, we know this boy and this boy and this girl. Here is just to show you the transfer from the train up on the deck of Ulua, and the people are controlling the names and they are entering the boat. Next, please. And this is how it looked like. The train with, I think, there was a special train, specially chartered, with 4 wagons of class 3, and it came all the way to the port. And here we can see on the actor part of the Ulua, and we can see because this part of the Ulua was rebuilt in Marseille, so they have the places to sleep at. Next one. What do you think this is? This is actually the cemetery in Stockholm, and they are Holocaust survivors, or I will call them actually Holocaust victims, that never made it, and they could know, even if they declared that they want to go to the Palestine, they died before.
How many of them?
There are, I think, 78 in Stockholm, but they are all over the country, close to the hospitals. They are cemeteries that came with the white boats, trains, and as well with the white buses. That was kind of the idea we decided in our Swedish Holocaust Memorial Association 2020. We decided to do one thing, as this field was mostly unknown, and most of the Jews in Stockholm, they thought that was the empty field because nothing was seen, and so they thought that was the empty field for the future funerals. We decided to, first of all, to mark it with 6 stones with the names of the death camps, because most of the families of the people that were buried here, most of their brothers and sisters and parents, they died, they were murdered in those 6 camps. And here we actually brought the soil from Israel, and here on the right is Daniel Kraus from our association, and he and Helena Bruce from the left. They are putting the soil we brought from Israel, so they could not go to Israel, but they got the piece of Israel on their graves. Next one. Here, this is a part of the history, because I was asked to find, and I could not read on her matseva the name, so we have to use the pen to mark it. And here you can see that they put her name is Frimet, and her family name is Einhorn with A-I, Einhorn. And she was born in Poland, that's right. There is another girl, Regina Pośladek, and she was from Lodz as well, but they put Czechoslovakia here, just to make it quickly. So they were not checking it, but now I applied for the money, and that will be probably already this year. They will redone wrong matsevas. What you can see as well here, that those 2 girls, they came on the first boat to Stockholm that came that came on 1st of July, and here you can see the date of death. She died just 6 days later, and she died 8 days later. Next one. Oh, and here we have the photograph which most of you know, and you know as well probably some of the persons here. And this is I am so lucky to look at that pictures when survivors are dancing hora on the way to Eretz Israel. And here I would like to thank you for your attention.